Welcome to Real Talk of Real Business Pros podcast, the podcast that empowers you to win at work, at home, and in life. Your host is Jonathan Lautermilch, a multiple best-selling author, CEO, and creator of Smart CRM. This show's mission is to bring you valuable insights, inspiration, and real-world strategies from the world's leading business minds. Get ready to start winning in every area of your life. Let's start the show. Welcome to another episode of Real Talk of Real Business Pros. It's your boy, Jonathan Lautermilch, your host with the most, and I've got a damn good guest on this episode. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is leadership, specifically when it comes to solopreneurs as they start to transition into entrepreneurs. So we're going to have a really cool episode today, tons of gold nuggets. Before we get started, though, if this is your first time tuning in, I just want you to kick back, relax, enjoy the show. Your gift to us is that you're taking time out of your valuable day to invest in yourself by listening to this podcast. However, if this is your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth, your umpteenth time, you know what I need you to do. I need you to like, I need you to subscribe, I need you to shoot. You can even send this directly to an entrepreneur that needs to hear this message today. Once again, it truly helps supports the channel, but more importantly, it supports the mission that we're on, which is to help our brothers and sisters get what they're worth in every area of their life. With that being said, let's go. I'm going to introduce our guest today. Our guest today is Laura Watson. Laura is the founder and lead business coach at Venture Coaching International in Calgary. With over 25 years of counseling and coaching experience, she helps business owners and executives across North America to improve their personal communication and leadership effectiveness. Laura's not in the boardroom. You'll find her in the ballroom. She is a 2023 World Country Dance Champion, passionate about taking her dance skills to the next level. I love it, Laura. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jonathan. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, so I didn't know the ballroom stuff. That's awesome. So I actually dated a girl before I met my wife. Who was a ballroom dancer. So I got tricked into learning ballroom.
Oh, she's sneaky.
She did. She was like, "Oh, you're going to do ballroom with me." I was like, "Okay." So I don't remember a whole lot, but I remember a little bit about it. And it's a lot harder than it looks. I do remember that.
It's definitely harder than it looks. Lots of practice.
Oh, I can only imagine. Well, I think the best place for us to start, Laura, before we go into your illustrious ballroom dancing career, is I would like to go back before where you're at today. So really, what was that specific event that happened in your life that put you on this track to business coaching, life coaching, and leadership coaching?
Oh my goodness, it goes back quite a ways. I've always been interested in two things. One is helping people, and the other was leadership. I grew up in a family in small town, Ontario. My parents were very generous with their time and their energy, and were members of numerous societies and associations, and they were always giving, always there wanting to help in some way. And so that was definitely role model to me, and is what caused me to go into my first profession, which was social work. But even, as I learned counseling and social work, and I moved into my master's, I had to choose clinical or management leadership. And having done a bit of work in the field already and worked one-on-one with people, I saw an opportunity to pursue leadership because I thought, working one-on-one with people is great, but leaders have opportunity to impact at a higher level. They impact their people, they impact policy. There's just lots of ways and ripple effects that happen with good leadership. And so that was always interesting to me. So I pursued some leadership training and education. I worked in the field, nonprofit field, for a number of years. And then my husband is an entrepreneur and had his own company. And I was starting to think, do I want a career change of some sort? My kids were going into full-time school, so there were other opportunities available to me. So I hired a career coach, and I evaluated my own career. Oh. And one of the things I was observing with my husband is that his business was his baby, in addition to the babies we had at home, right? He was pouring his heart, soul, blood, and tears into his business. and which is great. But I also saw that he was missing out on some family stuff, and his health was starting to take a toll. And in fact, about 11 years ago, he had a health crisis. And so I just thought, you know what, there's got to be a better way for business owners. They're putting so much, the reason they have their business in the first place is because they want to create a lifestyle for themselves. They want to have, they want to do what they love, but they also want to have time and lifestyle freedom and financial freedom. And if they're not doing that in a way that's focused and consistent, doing the right things in the right order, then they end up on all of these tangents that take away from being able to get where they want to go as quickly as they want to go. And they waste so much time and energy, and their health and their finances trying to just kind of muddle along sometimes and figure it out.
Oh,
So I thought there's got to be an easier way.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Laura, because like nobody talks about this when you become an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Like it's super sexy and glamorized. Like, oh yeah, being an entrepreneur is cool, and you can be your own boss and do all these things. But there's also the saying, "Heavy lies the crown." And you don't truly understand that until you put the crown on and walk a mile in those shoes, to say, because as you're telling that story about your husband, I have a similar story of what I've been through. And I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs that are friends of mine that I've met and built these awesome relationships over the years that, dude, that's the real battle. It's all the stuff that's happening like out of the business. That's really the real fight. So let me ask you this. So by the way, what business did your husband have or still have? What business is it?
Well, his company now is called Accrue Performance Marketing. Mm-hmm. And so he's a marketing strategist, and he sets himself up as a fractional CMO.
So one of the most stressful jobs you could have.
Yeah, he's been through the gamut. He started a business, he sold a business, made sure all of his investors came clean from that. I became a partner in another business, left that business, started again. So yes, he has been all over the place.
So what was the moment that you decided that y'all needed to make a change with just how y'all were running things? Because you mentioned had a health crisis, wasn't spending time with the family. So like, what did you implement in your family to start changing that?
Oh, in our family. Well, I mean, John and I have always played each other off really well. So, if he's got something on the go, business wise, then when the kids were younger, then I would be more present, and vice versa. So he spelled me off as well, because we were distant from our extended family. We didn't have any additional supports where we were living. So we were really, on our own, and also very committed to raising our kids ourselves instead of having somebody else do it. That was an important value.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Laura. I spent 5 years, what I call the building my life by design phase of my life. And those 5 years were all in anticipation and preparation for our daughter. Because, when I made a decision that when I was going to have a kid, that I was going to raise them, they weren't going to be raised on Sesame Street, or handed off to someone in daycare for hours on end and all this stuff. So like I worked really hard over those 5 years to not just financially get us to the right place, but to do it in a way that created the lifestyle like you were talking about, so that I can pick the days that I work and the time frames and all these different things. But it took 5 years, though, of not just doing the work, but developing myself to be the type of person I was ready for that. So I shared that with you because I would love to hear kind of like your insights and thoughts for entrepreneurs that you come in contact with. And your husband's a great example of, how to handle that struggle between the personal and the professional side, especially when you're trying to get a business off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the, entrepreneurship, running my own business, in addition to having children, has been the biggest personal development journey of my life. You just learn so much. And we learn, I think one of the most powerful lessons is that everything starts with us. Right? We might want to point the finger at a business partner or an employee and say, they're not getting it, they're not doing their job. But you know what? Leadership starts with us. And so I talk with leaders about the idea of lead yourself first,
Mm.
then lead your business. Because ultimately, you're as a leader, you're the role model, and can't coach others. And as a leader, you're really there to support others to grow in their development as well, and help them be better. Because as they're better, your company is going to be better. But it starts with the leader. So the leader, and it all starts up here. It's all in the mindset. A lot
Mm.
of people will focus on the results that they want to create, and then they'll think about, well, what action do I need to create to get that result? But where they really should be focusing is deeper in the chain reaction. And what I mean by that is our thoughts create our feelings, because we're actually pretty simple human beings. We do what we feel like doing, and we don't do what we don't feel like doing.
Right.
And how we feel is based in how we're thinking. So
Mm.
if we can shift our mindset on issues, that actually makes us feel differently about something. And once we feel different, we take different action. We take different action, we get different results. So if someone's feeling stuck on something, it's not, they don't need to really think about what action they need to do different. They need to look at their mindset.
Mm.
And because there's something in their mindset that is keeping them stuck.
No, that's well said, Laura. And as you're sharing that, I think about like when I first started and I stepped into entrepreneurship, because once again, like it's super attractive, and then you step into it and then you realize there's no one to blame but
What it's
yourself.
really like.
Right. It's like, hey, I don't have a boss. And you're like, oh shit, I don't have a boss. Like,
Yeah.
uh-oh, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
developing that self leadership was definitely one of the most important phases of like my entrepreneur career. And I ran away from it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's real easy to do. It's easy to, oh yeah, it's this person's fault or this
Mm-hmm.
thing's fault versus let me actually
Or I
find the
just got
book.
to check my Facebook feed one more time, right? It can show up as
Well,
distractions and
yeah,
procrastinations as well.
or doing work that isn't really work. It's like
Yes.
you're fooling yourself thinking you're being productive, but you're
Yeah.
not.
It's
But
just kind of busy distraction work. Yes.
yeah, for me, it was Reign Extreme Ownership by
Mm.
Jocko Wilgnitz. That was the book that like shifted that mindset piece for me, and that was back in 2019, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
And
Cool. Yeah.
reading that book at the time, and this is back when I had my business off my kitchen table, Laura. Like I was still like, just trying to get this thing off the ground. I'm doing
Yeah.
everything I can. And when I read that book, I felt empowered from it, because when you really lean into ownership, it actually is one of the most empowering feelings and places you can be in your life.
Yes.
Because most people operate as a victim, like, oh, this happened to
Yes.
me,
Mm-hmm,
and
exactly. I have to. And
yeah,
they don't even realize they're in victim mindset. Yes.
and there's just you can't you won't win no matter what you do,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're in that way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally leaned into like, how do I just own the hell out of everything? Like
Yes.
even when it was other people's fault, I'd still find a way to own it, because that way I would at least get some sort of control back, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And that's why that ownership became one of our core values, because of like that's how much that value has the ability to free you
Mm-hmm.
if you lean into it. So once I leaned into it, then I had to learn how to build confidence,
Mm-hmm.
right? So before I share like what I've learned that's worked for me and other people, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what are some things that you share with someone that's a solopreneur that it's mindset? Like, how do you get them to start building that confidence within themselves?
Well, so confidence comes from taking action,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't feel confidence, like, ooh, we hesitate, we procrastinate, and we don't take that action. Think that somehow we just have to be confident or fake it till we make it. And you
Right.
know what? There's an element of that. When I first started coaching, I had imposter syndrome. I viewed my mindset was that, oh, I'm just a little social worker. Who am I to be in the boardroom with these executives?
Right.
Right. And I felt imposter syndrome for quite some time. But the confidence that I've built over the years, whether it's in the boardroom or on the ballroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's from taking that action. Because even if and I just posted this on LinkedIn this morning, even if we fail, so called, we haven't failed, we've learned a lesson.
Mm.
And those lessons also build confidence. So it really is in taking an action, sometimes any action, just like a decision is better than no decision, an action is better than no action. Because
I
there's
love it.
right, some kind of result's going to come out of it, a learning of some kind, and then on to the next.
So I'll take it a step deeper. So like you're absolutely right, by the way. So like what
Oh, I love
the
hearing
thing
that.
don't we all? I don't hear it very often, so I always have to record mine when they happen. But yeah, but the person that said the right words and the right combination just had to make sense to me was Ed Milet. And he was talking about confidence comes from keeping the promises that you make to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said that, like the whole room lit up. Like you could hear like a pin drop. But there's a shift that happened inside of me at that time going, huh. So if I just become a promise keeper
Yes.
and not just a promise maker, that's where confidence comes from. As I think about it, it's like, well, every time I was able to fulfill on something, I feel a burst of, endorphins and serotonin
Absolutely.
and all the
Yeah,
good feelings,
a little
right?
hit to feel good, right?
Yeah, I feel good, right? So it's like, all right, so how do I weaponize this? And what I mean by weaponize it, I mean use it for my good, right? So that's where I came up with me and my team. We do something called the Big Five. So every day you pick 5 non-negotiables that you're going to do that day that's going to work towards whatever the target is for that week or month or whatever we're going after. And it started with me before I did it with my team. Like you said, lead yourself. But I was like, I got to guinea pig this thing first before I start teaching other people.
Fair.
So I start with me and I just pick 5 things. Now, there's some days I'm doing 10 things. There's some days maybe it's 3, but it's like a really big 3 that I'm doing. But as long as I set that target for 5 and I focus on done, that's where I look at the end of the week going, I got a lot done this week in like real things that were done, not something that was like make social media graphics for 2 hours. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like something actually intentional that's like done, moving on.
Yes.
And you start stacking those weeks together. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, we have a ton of momentum, and I'm not quite sure how it started. Well, how it started was you started keeping the promises you made to yourself.
Yes, doing what's important, right? And not necessarily urgent. Stephen Covey talks about that matrix, like urgent, important matters, and important, not urgent, like business planning and developing strategy. And that often gets left for what's in our face, right, on an everyday basis. And we have to do exactly what you're talking about. We have to put a moment aside in our day and look at what are those big 5 things that is going to move the business forward, because they're probably strategic activities.
Well,
right?
that's the other part is it forces you to actually pick good activities. Now,
Yes.
to my point, when I roll this out to a new team member, they always pick stupid stuff the first 5 times. They do. Because what the thing is, they don't know any better. Because my goal is to teach people how to think, not what to think. Because once again, if you're going to work on my team, like I don't want someone who's bringing me problems all the time. I want someone who's like, hey, here's a problem. I already solved it. Here's
the solution. Here, just giving you a heads up.
Yeah, that's the kind of person I want on my team.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I have to create an environment for that. But once again, like as we're teaching people, like, all right, what are these critical 5 things? We have to give them a filter to make those decisions based on. So, or I'd love to ask you, like, how do you help entrepreneurs determine the right things to focus on in their business? Because once again, there's a billion things we could be doing, but
Absolutely.
just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yeah. No, great question. And how I help business owners is actually I bring a tool to the table that you mentioned a book earlier, and I love finding the best resources for people to use and bringing other books and knowledge to the table. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to use the best wheels out there. And one of the best ones I have found is called the Vision Traction Organizer from the book called Traction by Gene.
Oh, I know Traction.
Yeah, Traction's awesome. What I love about it is, E-Myth by Michael Gerber a number of years ago talked about how to transition from being a practitioner to being a business owner. And he talked about creating systems and processes. So he talked about what to do, but he didn't transform that into how to do it. Traction is the how. So that vision traction organizer is basically a tool that I use with people to help them reverse engineer their business. So we get clear on the foundation work like you've done. You have know what your values are. You have a vision, mission, that sort of thing. But then from a reverse engineering perspective, you start to think about where do I want to be 10 years from now? Then in alignment with that, where do I want to be 5 years from now? Then in alignment with that, where do I want to be 1 year from now? We create goals and objectives for measurable, tangible goals for the year that then get prioritized into quarters. And then once we know so that might be the big 5 for the quarter, for example.
Yeah.
And then we look at each of those big 5s each week and what action do I need to take and related to moving each one of those big 5 forward. And then, so I use another tool called the scorecard that came out of the 12-week year. And that's how we take the quarterly goals, turn them into weekly action steps and keep consistent action happening.
So I've heard great things about that. So that's how that works. It's 12 weeks and it's basically a year, but in 12 weeks, and then you break it down into weekly.
Yeah, the author studied how elite athletes train, and he discovered that they don't focus on everything all at once. They can't. So what they do is for 12 weeks, they'll work on 1 or 2 skills. And then the next 12 weeks, a different skill. And then another 12 weeks, another skill. And so they layer the skill building that way. And you can do the same in business. Take your year, because you can't focus on everything all at once. Prioritize the goals and objectives for the year, and then work on them 1 quarter at a time. Whether you're taking the action or you're delegating the action, when you know what action needs to be taken, it's much easier to delegate because you as a leader are more clear in the first place. And I find that when people use this consistently, my clients anyways, are meeting or exceeding their targets because it keeps them consistent and keeps them strategic. And the confidence, to go back to that original topic, just goes through the roof when people start achieving what they've had on their to-do list for the past 3 years.
Right. Well, as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, I got to do all of that.
Well, I could coach you on that.
I know. I'm just sitting here like, yeah, I haven't done that. And no, I haven't done that. No, it makes total sense though. Like, because so for example, like we do book publishing and we start with the end in mind. Like, what's the goal of like what you want to do with the book? And then we work our way backwards to like, what are you actually writing the book about? So it makes total sense to like map out your goals for the year of like whatever your big rocks are for your business, and then reverse engineering that into quarters. So that's something that I've been working on, is expanding my thinking. So in the past, I've always thought pretty much like 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months out, and I wouldn't think much farther than that. Now I'm starting to think like 5 years out.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And it's been one of the most challenging things I've ever done, because like my brain just naturally doesn't go that direction. But I'm really glad that you're sharing these things. These are just all great indicators and things. Lean into that, Jonathan, lean into that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, okay. So we got the solopreneur. They're learning basically build confidence, keeping the promises they make to themselves.
Yep.
You know, what do you see for the entrepreneur that's like, they're on the bubble? Like they've got revenue, they've got systems. Now it's like, I need more people. What are some of the mistakes or challenges you see that a business owner goes through when they're doing that initial hiring of first-time team members coming on board?
Oh, well, I see a lot of business owners. First of all, they hire too fast. So because they just want a body in. And so one of the lessons I learned actually from my clients years ago was hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
So you have to take your time in the hiring process. And it starts with the leader being clear, the entrepreneur being clear. What role do they want this person play? What are the responsibilities that this person needs to take on? And again, back to traction, they've actually got an accountability chart that whether you're a solopreneur or even just have a small team or just starting to build your team, thinking through the various roles on the team and accountabilities, not just a typical org chart. So I think, that piece is really important. So having that in place, and then they hire for skill and not for attitude. And it actually should be reversed.
Right.
I tell you can't train attitude. You really want to hire people who are aligned with your core values, which means you need to know your own values first. Then you find someone who is a fit, really, gets what you're up to. There's a values alignment there. They want the type of opportunity that you have available to them, and they've got the capacity, whether they've got the knowledge and background and skills to do it. But definitely training for attitude, or hiring for attitude and then train for skill, I think is a really important piece. And then finally, what the entrepreneurs can do very easily is, and my clients, when they're hiring, will have people do a personality assessment. And, whether it's 16 personalities, which is related to the DISC model, or the Colby Index, which is an awesome tool for helping evaluate what's their MO, how do they approach work? Because people approach work in different ways. And if you need a degree of alignment on that. Otherwise, you can end up with a lot of unnecessary conflict.
So let me ask your thoughts on this, Laura. Would you recommend an entrepreneur hires like top down, like basically manager level first, and then build out from there, or do lower level and then build up the manager level from there?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and egg kind of conversation, right? I mean, if the entrepreneur has got the work coming in the door, then obviously he's going to need people to, frontline people to do that work. So I don't think there's necessarily an absolute right or wrong way. Because, for example, I have another client who's hired his senior people first. Now, those senior people are also doing frontline work, and then as the systems and processes build and the clients come on, now he's bringing in the frontline people underneath, and those people are able to elevate into those manager roles. And that's been working really well for him over the past year or 18 months, is hiring people who can do the work but have leadership ability, because they're two very different things.
Yes.
So it's definitely kind of a sweet spot that you're looking for. But if you can find that kind of person who is interested in leadership but has the frontline skills, get them on the frontline skills first and lead, and then move them into leadership after that.
So yeah, I'm glad I asked that, because like I went the original route first, like bottom level, and it was a nightmare trying to manage that, because I don't have a lot of time. That's my as I'm doing this. So what I learned from that was like, I'm going to hire top down, and then from there, as it grows, then we can put up people underneath that team member that's leading that side. And that has definitely made my life a lot more peaceful this last year and a half.
Nice.
I'll tell you that.
Awesome. Well, you've got a little baby at home to take care of, so you need a little more peace.
Yeah. So I think that's a great transition to the next portion too, then, Laura. So like, yeah, we do all this for business, and we want to help people, and we want to leave a legacy, and we want to build a lifestyle, but at the end of the day, like, I can't speak for every entrepreneur, but I believe that most are out there because they want to create a lifestyle and opportunities for their family. Absolutely. At the end of the day.
Yes.
And what ends up happening, and I can't tell you how many men I've met that this has happened to, is they become a victim of their own success. Like, yeah, they've got nice cars and a nice business, and they look good on paper, but behind the scenes, like, their kids can't stand them. Their wife's divorcing them. They've got health issues. They've got all this stuff, and it's because they've only been focusing on one area of their life, which is their business. There's three other whole entire areas that are just as important that we have to focus on. So I'd love to hear, as we start to land the plane here, like, what would be some insight and advice that you would give someone that maybe is like, they're winning in maybe their fitness and their business, but they're struggling in their marriage and their faith, or vice versa? What would be your words to that person going through that season right now?
Well, if they're already in that place where, business is going well and other areas of their life are struggling or suffering, or not getting paid attention to, then that means something isn't quite right in their business, because it's not a business, and real business, unless they can step away and have it operate without them. So there's some systems, there's process or people missing that's preventing them, or maybe they've got this mindset of they have to be in control, and that's preventing them from focusing on the other areas of their life, or they may not have gotten themselves organized enough yet. So tools like that like traction and knowing and getting organized so that you can be efficient and using your calendar, blocking time in your calendar for the things that you need to do. Because if you work on your off of your calendar, if your time is organized and you know you're pursuing your goals, then if that's happening efficiently and consistently, that opens up the time and the freedom to come back to family and health. And because that's important, without your health, you don't have a business, and without you, there's no family. It's incomplete. Right. And so I meet so many entrepreneurs that think self-care is a luxury and that they'll, that they don't have time for. And I tell them, no, it's the opposite. Self-care and family time is a necessity, not a luxury. Because yes, you can make all the money in the world, but it's going to be empty if you don't have someone to share it with. And I've met entrepreneurs who have those regrets. They have lost their family already. Their health has suffered. They've had a health crisis, and now they're trying to learn from those mistakes. And so it would be so awesome if people didn't have to make those mistakes in the first place and could, see that it's important and set their life up to be able to do both, because you really can if you're organized about it.
Yeah, well, and that's the cool part is like I believe we were designed to win in all areas, not just one or two of those areas. And once again, I'm a work of progress like anyone else. But one thing that's helped me a lot is like once again, I block my calendar off. Like everything has an appointment. Like even like putting my daughter to sleep is in my calendar.
Yes.
Right. Or when I play with her at 3:30 before the nanny gets here for an hour. Like all of that is in there, even working out. And when I started running my life like I run my business, things started getting better and more balanced. So now instead of these highs and lows, it's more steady Eddie and consistently moving up because I'm prioritizing those other areas just as much as I am my business. Now it's not easy. Like, I don't know about you, Laura, but like when I'm working out, like the hardest thing in the world for me to do is not check my phone on, there's a DM, better respond to this
Turn
person.
Turn those notifications off.
Right. I'm like, I could rest for a couple of minutes and I'm on my phone and that's all stuff. I'm like, Jonathan, stop. You need to be focused for this hour that you're here. And then same thing when I'm with my wife and my daughter, like it's very easy to like, my phone beeped. Let me go see what happened versus like, no, I'm going to hide this phone and I'm going to be present for this hour. It's definitely been challenging, but the fruit and the rewards for doing so, it's worth it. So.
Yeah. Did you know our phones are actually designed to keep us glued to them? Like those little pings and notifications, although they're handy, they actually do shoot off adrenaline in our brains. And so it's like we get that little hit every time the bell goes off. Got to check. And we don't. There, lots of successful businesses happened long before cell phones existed.
Right. Well, it's also like social media. It's also the social media too. Is like, like I do an online business, so like technically, like I'm always open, right? But I've had to set clear boundaries on, hey, at this time I don't respond to message. I don't care who you are. Like I'm not responding, or I'm not going to go peruse on Facebook. Because what I noticed would happen to me, Laura, is it's kind of like leaving your computer on and not turning it off. Like, yeah, it's fine for a couple of days, maybe even a week or two, but eventually your computer starts acting a little wonky. It's like, what's wrong with you? It's like, well, you haven't turned me off in 2 weeks, Jonathan. I'm tired. Right. So what I noticed for me is that's how my brain is. If I'm not setting these firm boundaries and doing things to like withdraw, otherwise I'll eventually hit this, I feel burnt out. And it's because I've left the browser tabs in my brain open the whole time and didn't close any of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it can feel, I know some of my clients resist sometimes blocking their calendar so fully. But when they do so, because it feels like they're blocking themselves in and it feels too strict and regimented. But when they actually do it and follow it, they find freedom opens up like you have.
Well,
it's fantastic.
Well, for me, it's like I don't get paid for how long I work. I get paid for what gets done.
Exactly.
So
So do
it's
I.
like I don't. That's pretty much how most people are,
Yeah.
right? Especially entrepreneurs. So it's just like this whole badge of honor of like, yeah, I worked 200 hours last week. It's like there's not even 200 hours in a week, sir. It's like, yeah, I made up extra hours so I could fit them in, so I could work them because I'm a grinder, I'm a hustler, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it's such a silly accolade to like
Hmm.
brag about. It's like you're telling me it takes you 2 to 3 times longer than the average person to do what you
When you
said
think
that you.
about it,
Yeah,
exactly.
you're really just inefficient at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So like now, like my work days are like 5 6 hours tops. Like I have 5 to 6 hours to get done what needs to get done. If it doesn't get done that day, it gets pushed to the next day.
Hmm.
So for me, like I have to be efficient. So it's like, all right, how do I pick my critical five or whatever that is
Yep.
within the 5 6 hours and go, boom, that was a win today.
Yeah.
What am I going to do tomorrow? And that's what all I focus on. It's just
Brilliant.
getting that stuff done. If I don't hit my big five, that's where I'm like, I messed up today. What can I do better tomorrow?
Yeah. And you learn from it and then carry on the next day. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. So, Laura, this has been great having you on. Let me ask you this: what's the best way for people to connect with you, follow, do all the things with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So I have a website, very simple, venturecoaching.ca. There's a bunch of there's a blog there. There's also a whole bunch of freebies. So if someone is looking to uh, wants a business plan for themselves or wants to learn more about communication or leadership in all its forms, then there's a whole bunch of free stuff there that people can
Cool.
take advantage of. So the website's usually the easiest, and then otherwise they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there too, and usually sharing some informative posts and tools to help entrepreneurs make life and business work better.
Awesome. Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time and your treasure for y'all tuning in. I'll make sure it's in the show notes for y'all. Highly recommend y'all take advantage of this. What everything Laura's talking about is absolutely true. And, it sounds like she's been doing this for a while, as you said. So go check that out. Go grab the free resources. And most importantly, go out there, be like Laura, and go get what you're worth, baby. Yay.
Awesome.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Real Talk of Real Business Pros. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this journey with us. We hope today's episode inspires you to take your career, relationships, and personal life to new heights. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep on getting what you're worth.